$12, $13, $14 an hour for factory workers. And you can move your factory south of the border, pay $1 an hour for labor. That is, when their jobs come up from $1 an hour to $6 an hour and ours go down to $6 an hour, then it's leveled again. But in the meantime, you've wrecked the country.
This did not happen. The North American Free Trade Agreement was a central issue of the 1992 presidential campaign. Did NAFTA break American politics? Asks a recent New York Times article and featured in a video I was tagged in. We'll start with the good and then finish with the bad. Real manufacturing wages in the United States did not decline, as presidential candidate Ross Perot predicted, but rather continue to grow to an average of $34 today. This is a total number that's affected by all the other things going on in the economy. When we zoom in and isolate just the effects of NAFTA, economists find that it had a positive effect on real wages in the United States. It benefited all three countries, but especially Mexico. And considering that the United States shares a 2,000-mile border, Mexico is the world's 12th or 13th largest economy, measured by population, by GDP, and funny enough, by landmass. It is in the U.S.'s interest to have more of this. Well, what about U.S. jobs? Jobs in America are doing awesome. A higher share of our prime age population is working today than they did in 1994. And they're generally good jobs. In 1993, only about 1/3 of workers said that they were completely satisfied with their jobs. Zoom forward today, and that number is 50%, with an additional 41% saying they are somewhat satisfied. Well, okay, but what about manufacturing jobs? Those have declined. The harder question is whether this could have been avoided. I don't think by much, because the percent of the workforce in manufacturing has been in decline for nearly 80 years. From a third just after World War II to now down to less than 8%. Economic growth in services and labor-saving technologies are the main drivers. This paper found that the introduction of robots between 1990 and 2015 saw a decline in manufacturing employment, but an increase in non-manufacturing employment. Also, just as a quick side note, there is evidence that robots will be necessary to reshore jobs to America from Mexico. Across industries, American robots replace Mexican workers. And through the 90s and 2000s, we kept producing more manufactured stuff. However, since the financial crisis, it has leveled off. Now on to the bad. While the total American economy improved because of NAFTA, there were devastating local effects. For NAFTA, the top 25% of counties experienced far more protection compared to the counties in the rest of America. And as you can see in the dark red, they are concentrated in the South. However, pockets exist in the Rust Belt and in the rest of the country. This paper finds that NAFTA lowered employment in these counties. Because we saw net job gains in other parts of the country, folks could have moved there. But we find that they didn't. The population stayed the same. Moving is costly, and not just because of housing, although cheaper housing in urban areas would help, but because it uproots communities and relationships. When the total benefits are larger than the total costs, folks need to be compensated. America's engagement in world trade contributed $2.6 trillion in 1 year. Some of these benefits need to be invested into these communities and into the people who face these costs. There already exists trade adjustment assistance, but as you can see, enrollment ticked up a little bit after 1994. It wasn't long-lasting, and clearly the magnitude wasn't enough. In the end, I think this may be a total failure of the economic profession. We were right to tout the benefits of free trade, but we gave scant lip service to the costs. It was just assumed that folks would move to new cities, but they didn't. And because policies to alleviate those costs were ignored or underfunded, we no longer have a real cure on the policy table, other than a narrow policy prescription of local investment, getting a sledgehammer of universal tariffs, making the whole country worse off.